Well, hello everyone. I'm Jen Gabrielle-Chapman. As mentioned, I work at Simply Business. I'm really sorry that we can't all meet in person, and I hope you're all keeping well. My colleague Rob and I are going to talk to you a little bit today around navigating your career in light of COVID-19. It's an unprecedented situation that we'll find ourselves in, and we're hoping that we can share some of the sort of top tips and tricks that you can get to work with now that'll help you in terms of going through what we're all going through, which is generally quite pants. So what's on the agenda? We've got about 20 minutes. It's a time at the end for questions, and in 5 handy bullet points, we're going to talk around what's going on at the moment, what can you do right now, some tips and tricks, top tips from the techie Rob. Can't believe I said that without falling over my words, and then a bit at the end, which is how we can help you and how we can try and give back a little bit. So for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Jen. I've worked in TA for about 15 years or so. Worked for lots of different types of companies, but mainly the trendy sorts. Media and advertising sounds very glamorous, but trust me, it isn't. And made the switch over to InsurTech about 8 months ago when I joined Simply Business. My role looks after both hiring, but also inclusion. So it's a bit of a weird combo, but also works really well because it's kind of an equal measure about hiring the right people, but also ensuring that we create a culture where everyone feels included and people want to stay. So I hope that gives you a really quick top line as to me. Rob, do you want to explain who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Rob and I work as an engineer at Simply Business. So I've been there for about a year and a half. I've been in what I imagine are some of your guys' shoes in that I was a bootcamp grad. So I went through a career change when I was about 27 and Simply Business was my first job out of it. And I was previously a tech recruiter. So I did about 5 years working in recruitment. So I've been on both sides of the fence. And then also a bit of a plug, if nothing else, I've got a podcast. And I interview people who have career switched. So I've had some interesting conversations with people who have gone through maybe a similar journey than you're going through now. And I talk through like their own experience, and some went to boot camp, some went the self-taught route, some went back to uni and that kind of stuff. So that's me.
Cool. And just to save anyone trying to scribble down links and all the rest of it as we go through, we're going to share the deck afterwards, and we've put in some handy links to everything that we're going through, including the podcast, which I'm sure will be really, really helpful. Cool. So about Simply Business. Rob, did you want to do the intro to SB or yeah?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. So Simply Business, we're a broker for, as you've got some notes here. We are an insurance tech company, and we provide a white label service for some brands that you're probably more familiar with than our own. And that's the brands like Compare the Market, Go Compare, Money Supermarket. If you're buying landlord or business, small business insurance through one of those platforms, there's a good chance you bought it through us. So that's more the business side. But in terms of the tech side, which you might be a little bit more interested in, we have Ruby on Rails as our core platform. We've got a mixture of monoliths and services, and we have about 200 people in tech, and that's a mixture of engineers, people in data, people in DevOps, and about 700 people total in the company. We've got a hub in London for our EMEA region, and then we've got a hub in Boston for our US region, but we've got people working remotely all over. Obviously, we're all working remotely at the moment, but generally we have people based from all across the globe.
Yeah, it's worth calling out as well. We do also have an office up in Northampton as well, but they do slightly different things to the tech. But yeah, like it's kind of funny, like saying, well, we have these offices, but we haven't seen them in weeks. We hope they're still there. And I said it's, well, the tech piece is really important for me. Actually, who we are and kind of what Simply Business is like behind closed doors is really important. I'm slightly biased because I head up talent acquisition, but you can see from our Glassdoor scores, from the stuff that we do with the Sunday Times and BCorp, that are a really great place to work as well. I'm not going to try and do the big, huge sell-in on you, but for anyone that doesn't know what BCorp is, it basically means that our company is a force for good. So we balance profitability and giving back to the wider society. And we're one of just under, I think it's 200 UK companies that have got that accreditation. So it's pretty cool. And I'll stop doing the big sales pitch, but it makes us a really great place to work. And, we give a damn about the people that we work with and the place that we're in. So what's the latest with hiring in COVID-19? I was trying to find a picture, but I love this one. And again, I'll share a link for the guy that does all these fantastic graphics. But it was probably the most, work safe version that I could find. Short answer is things are pretty bad at the moment. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've worked in talent acquisition for a long time. And if you're looking to change jobs or worse still start out in the world of work this year, it's going to be really challenging. To make matters worse, from what we've seen, probably the biggest impact and the highest impact that we're going to see is for anyone who's at the start of their careers. So entry-level roles, internships, placements, right the way through to first and second job have been hit and will be hit really, really hard. To give it a little bit of a fancy visual, and I'm hoping that's it's ticking through. If you can look at the top two columns, you can basically see that the IT jobs, which is the top bit, kind of obviously everything's shrinking as we're going through February and March. Yeah, the UK job market shrunk by over 50% in a matter of weeks. And I'm sorry that it's not a more positive story, but it is tough. In the US, I think we've seen about, I think it was 38% was the percentage that I got quoted when looking for some numbers around this. You know, that's never happened before in such a short space of time. The pandemic does continue to disrupt certain types of roles more than others too. So, you know, while we think it's bad, and it is currently bad, obviously working in tech, you know, hospitality, energy, administration vacancies have got their lowest levels in 8 years. I've never seen anything like it. The good news is that things will always get better, and there are always other areas of industry that are gonna do really well. You know, see healthcare for the first time has actually overtaken IT. There are other areas which will be hiring. We'll come on to that in a little bit too. So it's not hopefully all too much doom and gloom. I mean, I guess, you know, I guess that the kind of the main thing, or the tricky thing that we have right now is that we don't know when the impact of COVID is going to lessen up. We're all trying to predict various scenarios and we don't really know what we can do. So when I was thinking about this presentation, something that we can give back, I wanted just to focus on what I can share to take care of yourself first and foremost. And I guess a big part of that is resilience. It's a term that gets used a lot within the corporate world, but I'm hoping that a couple of tips that I can share with you on how to build resilience might also put you in a good spot. Something that's called the Pomodoro Technique, or a flat tomato technique, which is working in 90-minute cycles and then taking 15 minutes to disconnect. It's a really, really, really good working pattern if you're doing anything, to be honest, in your life. Anything you're focusing on, anything for more than 90 minutes, you need to take that 15-minute break. Again, I'll put some links when we send the deck through to give you some tips that you can go and have a look. But also getting outside as and when you can, or if you've got a garden, or if you have a different room, getting some space or moving around a bit is really, really good, especially if you're job hunting or if you're working on a piece of code and you're focused on the screen. Reduced media coverage is kind of an obvious one, especially if it's making you anxious. I'm not watching the news at the moment because I know it's making me feel pretty stressed out. And any news I am looking at, I'm making sure it's some trusted media outlets. So there's no clickbait. I'm not having any of that in my life. There's enough of that around. Also, something that's really great for resilience is engaging with more than just a screen or Netflix. You know, we've all probably watched a ton of stuff recently to try and while away the time. Board games are really, really good. Reading is fantastic. And actually, I've taken to colouring books, and I'm not going to open this up, because you can see it's quite a rude colouring book. But turns out that actually colouring and taking, again, time away from screens is a really, really good thing to get your mind to reset itself. And again, making time for sleep, being mindful of screen time, watching out for blue light, stuff that I'm sure you'll know a lot about. On the flip side, because this again will put you in really good stead when you are looking for work, is making sure that your mental health is in a good place, because looking for jobs is really tough. There's a lot of rejection, there's a lot of competition. Some tips that I have, which is trying to make sure you're waking up at the same time every day, even on the weekends, can be really, really tempting, and I'm guilty of it for binge sleeping. Try and join some kind of local communities online if you've got some friends you can connect with in your local area, and breaking up your day with little micro lifts. So my team and I at the moment, we're doing 30 minutes as a coffee break every day, no agenda, just turn up, anyone that's free dials in, we grab a coffee and we just shoot the breeze. Also, I'm sitting here on a kneeling desk thing because I've hurt my back. So another really big thing, physical and mental health, is that making sure you're stretching out your back and your neck. I spent all of Saturday lying on my back on a yoga mat, and it's not fun. And 6 weeks in, turns out I'm not in my 20s anymore. I can't just stare at a computer screen anymore. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but excessive alcohol and recreational drug use are not going to help you either. So just being really, really mindful of what you're putting in and making sure you've got some fresh fruit and veg going in, and nothing too bad that's going to maybe counteract your mental health and well-being. Hang on, that hasn't showed up. So what else can I do now? The actual practical tips, right? So you're in a good space, you're feeling good, you've got some of your resilience tips up and running. What can you actually do right now? the biggest tip I can give you is the more you network now, the better things will be in the long term. For a lot of the people that I coached through employment during the last recession, which is kind of the only point of reference that I've got to what we're going through now, is the people that put in the effort now and got things, you know, in kind of match condition, saw the greater results at the end of it. Some really, really top line tips and trips, but have a look at what your actual strengths are. And there's some stuff online by Gallup or by Insights. Again, I'll include the links. They're really helpful in understanding what it is that makes you tick and what it is that, you know, kind of brings you to life. Insights I used at my last job, and Gallup we use here at Simply Business. And it's really handy for understanding what it is that gives you that unique perception that a lot of the people, you know, probably don't have. Your CV and GitHub, of course, you've got to get those match fit. Optimizing a LinkedIn profile, there's quite a knack, and I could do a whole hour talking you through, you know, how to optimize who you are online and how to get people to notice you. I'm sure, Rob, from your recruitment days, you've probably done the same. But your profile's got a lot of SEO behind it. Learning how to use that, and again, I've included some links that will really, really get you in a good place. Job alerts sounds really simple, but the algorithms behind them do some awesome work. Let them do all the heavy lifting, and then start to follow and find companies that you want to work for. And my advice in that space would be, don't just go for the big companies, because they will have, well, in the normal sense, normally lots of big headcount requests. You might be lured in by a particular brand. I would say the small to medium sized companies will be the ones that will probably give you the most fulfilling work in your early years, in my tuppence worth, in my experience. And start connecting with people. Find a mentor or ask for 3 of them. You know, there's no limit as to the amount of mentors that you can get. But building out your network at this early stage, it's a really, really good start to help you in the longer term. And Simply Business is here to help with that. So I just want to call out that we have a talent acquisition team in-house, and I very kindly put them on the line saying all this stuff on here. If you don't know how to do it, there'll be an email address. Get in touch with us. We'll put in a one-to-one session with you, and we'll talk you through it. The GitHub might be a little bit harder because we're not techies, but certainly anything else on that list we can help you out with, and make sure that you're in the right position when we come out of this nightmare. Mentoring, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to whiz through this a little bit. It can be really, really difficult to know how to get a mentor, and actually what do you even do to go about it, especially if you've never had one before. So I thought I'll just give you Jen's top tips of what I would suggest. First thing is, find someone that you want to be like, or a discipline that you want to work with. There's no point having a mentor with someone that's in something that's so disconnected where you want to be and where your career aspirations want to be. And then the scary bit, you've actually got to reach out to them and make contact. Good news is most people are nice. No one's going to be unkind or cruel. And actually you probably get a much better response than I've ever had from a headhunting call by making contacts. So most people are very, very responsive to mentoring requests. I would say that, again, establish some expectations. What is it you want to get out of it? As with any relationship, you know, what are the goals? What's the kind of ambition? And making sure that's a two-way thing, because a mentorship is about give and take. It's on both sides. Find out a cadence that works for both, i.e. like how often do you want to meet? It could be that with one mentor you want to meet them once a week, other mentor maybe it's once a month or once every 6 months. And then have a listen to the advice. It's asking lots of questions. And the obvious one, which is please don't be offended if you're challenged. I've got a few people that I mentor, and I could sit there and say yes, yes, and nod and connect them to people and ask along. Actually, the role of a good mentor often will be to challenge you and to get you to change and open up your way of thinking. As always, mind your P's and Q's. Always be polite and say thank you for the time. Last but not least, hopefully a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. Who's hiring? There are still companies hiring. I know it's horrible, and I keep saying it's a pants situation, but it's horrible right now for everyone. But there are lots of different companies out there that are actually on the way up. And my last minute top tips is say, have a look at the FTSE 100. When I worked as a recruiter in the last recession, the best tip that I ever have was to go through and see actually who was doing well in the world of business. Share prices are a really, really great way to narrow down your options if you just don't know where to start. Whoever's making money, chances are they'll be hiring. I'm conscious I've got about 30 seconds left, so I'm going to hand over to Rob, and he's going to carry on. Is that cool?
That's good. Thanks, Jen.
No worries.
You're going to click for me, aren't you? Nice. All right, perfect. All right, there might be some animation on it, so we'll see how we get on with it. So I'm going to talk to you about how to maximize your time in lockdown. Just one person's opinion. Obviously, there will be other people with other opinions and advice. This is just my own. It's not exhaustive, but this is kind of what came to mind when I thought about this question. So if you go next slide, Jen, thanks. So I'm just going to quickly refresh on what do employers care about. And the reason why I'm starting here is because I honestly believe that what employers are looking for is going to be the same now as it was before all of this happened. But it's useful to just refresh on it because it's going to then inform what we can do with our time in order to improve these different qualities or experience that the employers are looking for by the time that we get to the interview stages with companies, or the time we can apply for stuff. So if you can whiz through them, Jen. So are you passionate about software development? Are you motivated to learn? Can you work with others? Do you understand the fundamentals of building software? Can you code using a programming language? Do you know good practices in regards to building software? Do you know how to write tests to test software? And then can you evidence the above? And obviously that's the important one, because when you go to a company, whether it's during an application process or when you're in the interview process, that's the kind of things they're going to be looking for. Like I say, not exhaustive. Job descriptions and adverts that you read will be the best place for telling you what they're looking for specifically, but just to hammer home that they're still looking for the same things that they will have been a couple of months ago. If you pop to the next one, Jen. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of how you can spend your time, and I'll start with the obvious ones. And obvious is a bit of a loaded word. It might not be obvious if you've not heard this before. So there's no expectation if you if you've not thought of these before. You only really would have thought of them if somebody had kind of shown you them. So if this is your first time someone showing you this, fantastic. If not, then I'm just laboring what a lot of people will tell you is important to do. Code challenges are fantastic, good opportunity to practice your experience with a particular language and problem solving in quite a small, narrow frame. And then you've got online courses. I've put two on there that I really, really recommend. One is a Udemy course. It costs £10. It's a complete online bootcamp. It's very comprehensive, and I have pointed a few people to it, and they've gone really well with it. And the other is my personal favorite, which is CS50, which is an open sourced program by Harvard. And it's the exact same course that you would get if you were a student there. And you can follow the lectures and you do the problem sets each week. If you've not heard of it, then if you get nothing else out of what I've said, Google CS50 and check it out. I'd really recommend it. And then the other thing is taking all of the experience that you have and then starting a personal project. And I used to struggle with what kind of personal project could I do. So I've put a couple of hints for what might help you think of something that you could be working on. So these are the obvious ones and more common ones that you might hear. I've tried to throw in some ones that you maybe haven't heard or thought about. So here, potentially the less obvious, Ben, you might be more familiar with them. One is try and see if you can find somebody. I mean, there's 133 people on this call, right? And a lot of them will be in the same situation that you're in. Try and find somebody who's also learning to code and see if you can build a product or a project or an app together. Getting experience of working in teams and developing software with more than one person is an incredibly, incredibly useful and valuable tool. So if you can do that, that's fantastic. There's another website that you might want to check out called the Odin Project, and that really helps facilitate getting that experience. It's free. You go through their course, but you also get paired up with other people, so you can get experience of working with teams without having to pay for a bootcamp if that's a potential option to get that experience as well. There's also something through Free Code Academy. I've not done this myself, but I've heard good things that you can, once you've gone through a certain amount of their course, you can actually work with non-profits. So again, to get real world experience, here's something I built that's being used by somebody. If you've got the time and you're able to, then that might be something to look into. I'm going to hammer home the mentorship that Jen mentioned. I think it's really, really, really important. And it's really, really different than what I thought it would be like when I was learning to code, in that I didn't realize how open people are to being mentors. People get a lot out of being a mentor to somebody who's learning. So it's a mutual benefit for the people that you're asking. And also, I can guarantee you that they've had people that have mentored them. So they are just repaying the favor by kind of passing that along. And then you will do that in the future. I had somebody, quick kind of side note, I had somebody who had found my podcast on Spotify. And he reached out to me to see if I could talk to him about it. Like, he's thinking about making a career change. And he messaged me, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so happy. That's like I've been able to like help someone with it, and he was like really surprised that I was so open to like just spending an hour or two on Zoom with him, and it was exactly what I wanted and why I was kind of creating that content. So a lot of people out there that will be very open to you reaching out to them. So don't be afraid of asking people for mentorship. Another idea, try and replicate sites that already exist. That's a really easy way to think of a personal project if you've not got one in mind, and a really good way to kind of measure against something that actually already exists to see if you're doing well or not. And then the other two are, you will hopefully at one point get to an interview, and during that interview process, it's probable that you'll either have an in-person technical test for about an hour where you'll answer a coding challenge on the spot. Or you'll do a take-home test where you'll have, a set amount of time, probably 2 or 3 days, or maybe a little bit longer, to complete a challenge that will take you longer than an hour, but you'll be able to do it in the privacy of your own home and with the amount of time that you want to spend. And you can get access to these tests that actually exist. And I've put one for Skyscanner. So it's on their GitHub. I've not like stolen it and publicizing it. It's on their GitHub account. You can go onto it and you can see what one of these tests look like. And it's fantastic as preparation because you get to kind of familiarize yourself with the process and what to expect. But you're also then getting the practice. So I went to a bootcamp, Makers Academy, and they had a whole week where we would complete these tests and we'd get our mentors to review them, the coaches in that instance. So if you've got a mentor and you complete one of these tests, you can get their feedback and they can have a read through. They can give you tips or they can give you comments on your code. That can be a really good way to get some feedback on how you're doing and how you can improve, but also be a lot more prepared by the time you do reach the interview stage so that you can perform well and maximize your chances of getting a job. So that's for how you can spend your time. I think that's the last slide actually.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, just to say, Rob, honestly, thank you. That's awesome. And just to reiterate as well, like if you're going for interviews, if you have questions around process, if you've not interviewed before, as much as mentors are great for the technical side, don't forget our talent acquisition team can give you a hand as well with basic interview prep, or potentially share with you some resources as well for getting the most out of a Zoom interview. Because yeah, it's a new world we're living in, right? Cool. All these links will be there. Connect with Rob and I on LinkedIn. We're more than happy. And again, equally, if either of us are connected with other people that you want to be connected to, that's what it's all about. The email's on there to drop us a line, and the SB Tech website and our meetup group. And Julia will kill me if I don't say follow us on social media. I think that's it from us. And we've got, I think, a couple of minutes for questions. I'm going to stop sharing because that's just...
So thank you so much, Jen and Rob. That was amazing. I think everyone was very effusive in the comments. If anyone has any questions, by the way, yeah, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Please feel free to sort of write your question on chat and I'll just read it out. Anyone?
I think I might have a question then, because I've done. Because I'm in a situation, I think it's probably quite particular, quite specific. I'm reconverting from biology to data analysis and data science. And I'm feeling a bit lost, to say the least. So I'm learning things and I'm hearing conflicting advices. For example, I'm doing the CS50 course, Harvard X. At the same time, I'm trying to learn Python on Data Camp. I did General Assembly course, so I learned some SQL, a bit more flexible. It was quite easy, and some Tableau, which is more like data visualization. And my father being like in informatics, he told me, oh, like you should not do this because like in Harvard X, they start with C. And he was explaining me all of the reasons why C was a bad language to start with. And I was even more lost than before. I didn't know what to do with this advice because it's like, I'm trying to do my best and then I'm doing it completely wrong, apparently. So what would be your advice?
There is no wrong. There absolutely is no wrong. I'm sure you've done absolutely nothing that's wrong. I mean, Rob, you might want to talk about the more specific technical bits, but I would certainly say that a mentor that works specifically in the field that you want to work in would totally be the right thing to do. Someone that's in the job that you want to be in will be able to help guide you. I think. Rob, did you want to answer that with a more technical lens?
Yeah, and again, just my opinion. Other people may have different opinions, and I think the point I'm going to make is that everyone's got an opinion, and everyone will. It doesn't change when you become a software developer, and then you go to a company and they're developing in Ruby, and then everyone there thinks JavaScript's rubbish, and then you go to a company developing JavaScript, and then they all think that Python's rubbish, and then you go to a company. It goes on and on and on. No one in the tech industry can agree on anything. So it doesn't surprise me that one person's telling you to do one thing and then another person's telling you to do another, and they're speaking from their own experience, and they've got an opinion based in the experience that they've had, and it's valuable. But everyone disagrees. I agree with Jen in that I don't think there's any wrong way. Personally, I think I made a mistake and I kept on jumping around lots of different languages. I did a Python course and a JavaScript course and I did a Ruby course, and I got caught in the weeds of learning the syntax of different languages rather than kind of really getting to a point where I was just using the language as a tool to build something. I then got onto a boot camp when I focused more on just full stack web development using one language to begin with, and that helped me focus. But I went through that experience and I became a software developer. So I really do think as long as you just keep moving forward, the one tip I'd give you is try and find courses where it gives you bigger than just an introduction. And that's why I like CS50. It's why I like that web development bootcamp, because one of the most difficult things for me when I was learning to develop was I didn't know what I needed to know in order to get to a point that I could be hired, right? And I also didn't know what I need to know in order to build a web app or a piece of software or a website or whatever the case might be. I really needed somebody who knew, you need to learn this language, but you also need to learn how servers work, and you need to learn how HTTP request response cycle works. So it was useful to get into a course where I knew that it covered all of the fundamentals to get to a point where I was able to actually build something. And the courses that I've recommended all fall into that category, and it's one of the reasons I recommend them. But you're doing nothing wrong. Keep going.
Plus, I'm taking exactly this one, so I was just like, oh, good. This one is good actually, and I learned some. I used to do. I stopped it. A PhD in biology, and at some point I was given a bunch of data, and I was told to analyze it by hand, and I was overwhelmed by it. I said, no way I'm going to analyze it by hand. So I used some, I like very do-it-yourself way. I did like some LaTeX and R, and then I got to something, and then, well, I burned out. But the thing is, sometimes people say, oh, R is rubbish, it's for academia, and then others say you'd rather do Python. So I start doing Python, and then I start learning C, and I'm told, oh, you shouldn't learn that, you should learn C++, or maybe you should learn Pascal if you're not interested in what.
Sorry, Claire, we're just gonna, I appreciate you for Jen and Rob, but I'm sure they'll sort of get in touch with you directly, and you can sort of reach out to either Rob or Jen directly. We have a few more questions coming in. I'm a bit mindful of time, so I think we'll just do one more, and then maybe Chris, and I think there's one other question if you sort of message Jen and Rob directly. So Jyoti had a question of, do you have any interview question examples?
Would help if I wasn't on mute. Yeah, so honestly, as a follow-up, there's a ton that I could certainly share on that. I suppose it depends. The normal kind of interview process would tend to be, the first interview, you get very much more open questions that are trying to find out a little bit more about you and what makes you tick. Normally that's a bit like the first date. And then if things are going well, you kind of get your second date, which is more of a deep dive, and you might then come across some stuff like competency questions or behavioral questions. If you want to message me afterwards, I can actually share a couple of guides that I've written earlier in my career, which will show you kind of how they're scored, for want of better words, or what good looks like. But equally, again, in terms of interview prep, more than happy we could do a mock interview with one of the TA team at Simply Business. I can see Ollie's on the line, resplendent in his flat at home, and I'll be happy to point you in his direction to help with that.
So we'll do one more question actually from Chris, which was, he said, you gave a lot of suggestions of things to do during this time, which were awesome. Which should be the highest priority?
You know what? I'm sorry, Rob, I'm just going to, sorry, I jumped in. Being very rude. Like, we're not in the same room. Visuals. Get your LinkedIn in order, because it's the one thing that all tech recruiters will always want to do, no matter how senior you are. If your LinkedIn profile is super hot, you'll be found and you'll get people approaching you for jobs. And, you know, I think to me, your GitHub, yes, is important, but often it'll be someone like me or one of my team that will be connecting you to the teams like Rob in a business. And they'll always use LinkedIn. That's the first point of call. And I just saw a little thing flash up about email addresses. Don't worry, in the deck, there'll be my contact details, Rob contact details, and the email for Simply Business. So you can get in touch with us straight afterwards. I'm gonna have to turn off the chat because it's making me dizzy.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions coming on in chat. I think we're gonna have to move on to the next speaker. I know there's a lot of questions for Jen and Rob. I think as they've said, they're gonna share their contact details. There are other Simply Business people on the line as well. I think either reach out to one of them by Julia's waving, either reach out to one of them by messaging them directly, whether that is Rob or Jen or anyone else from Simply Business. If not, I suspect they'll also sort of go through the chat and be answering some of your questions.